welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson, and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hey, I'm DJ Ross. I am in Mountain View, California.
Each week here on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. This week we're checking out demos for Monster Hunter 2's... Nope, that's not it. Monster Hunter Stories 2. That's it.
You got it.
Wings of Ruin, and Neo, The World Ends With You.
Oh, it's kind of a demo week.
Yep. I feel like there's just a ton of demos that got dumped during the E3 week, and I downloaded many of them, and I'm just starting to get around to them now.
Yeah.
And the good news is the game has not come out yet. No, wait, Monster Hunter came out.
That came out, yeah, that is out.
That came out.
You don't need to play the demo at this point.
You can play the demo to determine whether or not you want to play the whole game.
Right. Well, I mean, you don't need to be limited to just playing the demo if you decide to
Correct.
To take the big next step.
Yeah. And ordinarily, when you finish a video game demo, it's usually some weeks before the, or perhaps even, longer before the actual game comes out. But not in this case.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can finish the demo for Monster Hunter Stories 2. And if you are entertained sufficiently, just immediately roll right into the main game.
Yeah. Very convenient.
With a small $60 upcharge.
Right. But I think this is one of those cases, again, where it just lets you carry all your data over to the full thing, doesn't it?
It is, yeah. You can just carry your progress, because the chunk of the game that is the demo is just the first couple of hours of the game. So, yeah, you just sort of drop right in where you left off after you finish the demo.
Yeah. That's nice.
Which I dig.
Nice
That's cool.
That more demos are doing this these days, especially because it feels like demos these days are just interminably long. But we can get into that.
This is a very substantial demo. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it would be a bummer to replay it. Although the game says you could replay it if you'd like. I'm like, no, I'm good.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you really enjoyed it.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to it. Okay.
Yeah. That's the big tease.
Right.
So once again, we have some new music.
Yeah.
I'd
like to give a special thanks this week to HEAVYVIPER for our new intro and outro music, as you heard on the way in. You can head on over to heavyviper.bandcamp.com, check out some more of his albums. There are quite a few on there. I'd like to just call out, though, so some of the music you heard, it comes from this album called Every Days Into Dreams, the Viper Daily 2020 project, which is an album with one track sort of written for every day in 2020, if I have this right. Let me just count. 366. So there's a bonus track. Unless it
was leap year.
Was it a leap year last year?
I believe it was, yeah.
What a nightmare. What a year to have just an extra 24 hours.
Really. Everybody loved 2020 so much, you get a whole extra day.
Yeah, okay. So, well, I mean, fully committed to it. That's impressive. I wonder if that was like just psyching himself up. Going to do 365 songs this year, and then just realizing, like, I need one more of all the years to decide to do this. But anyway, amazing album. Just a ton of breadth and variety in there. Recommended you take a listen. Definitely something to do if you need a lot of stuff to listen to. And it's all very good.
That's awesome. I can't think of anything I can do 365 times in a year, so... Yeah. That's impressive.
Sometimes I don't even get out of bed 365 times. So anyway, thanks so much again, HEAVYVIPER. We'll have another little song on the way out. Very cool.
Excellent. So what's up, DJ? Anything else new? Anything else going on in your life? Anything sort of interesting or noteworthy or substantial to report?
I went miniature golfing this weekend.
Oh, wow.
Is that interesting? I haven't been miniature golfing in a long time.
I'm a fan of miniature golf. I enjoy miniature golf. When Sarah and I travel places, we almost inevitably find sort of some free time somewhere and a miniature golf course.
Oh, really? You seek that out? That's cool.
Yeah, we like that.
I felt like we were just talking about golf. You play that Mario Golf game, I was like, this seems appropriate.
So let's get a quick summary here. Video Game Hangover, first 502 episodes are Animal Crossing, Final Fantasy,
majority
and golf.
Yeah.
And Taco Bell. That's pretty much the whole thing.
Yeah. No, I went with my friend and his two young children. I believe it was their first time miniature golfing, so that was also very exciting.
Oh, nice.
I have not been to this golf course in a while. This was Golfland in Sunnyvale. Golfland There's a bunch of locations around the bay. I mean, it still does have a bunch of locations, but they were famous for being sort of test locations for fighting games or just arcade games back in the day when that was a thing.
Oh, neat. So it's a miniature golf course with an arcade.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Are there any miniature golf courses without an arcade?
Yeah.
Not a real miniature golf course, if you ask me.
Maybe I'm just not going to the right ones, apparently, but that is surprising to me. Yeah. That's maybe that's a California thing, but yeah. Geez, I can't remember the last time I went to a miniature golf course that had an arcade.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
Well, it had been a while since I had been to this place. Previously, I would, go for the arcade. It had been a while since I did the actual golf component of it, but it was nice to see that there was this little arcade attached to it. It's a lot more like giant versions of mobile games than I remember it being, but whatever, that's fine. Whatever they're into.
That's what's happening at Dave & Buster's right now. So, yeah, that's, if you ever wanted to play Fruit Ninja on a 55-inch television, have I got a place for you?
That is what we ended up doing. Like, it was all about just, like, whatever the kids wanted to do. I was like, what looks cool? And they're like, this one. And I just look over, and it was, like, Fruit Ninja and Flappy Bird. And what was the other? It was Candy Crush and then one more. But I was just like, oh, Doodle Jump. Doodle Jump was on there. Just all those great games you couldn't get enough of in, like, 2010. It's just like, okay, let's play this, I guess. But it was fine. It was fine.
Yeah. That's funny.
Oh yeah, just weird how much the arcade scene has changed. I mean, I know it's like there's not a whole lot of an arcade scene anymore. I mean, it's kind of coming back in some places. Like Round One has made a lot of headway in the U.S. It's very cool. But yeah, so different than the last time I went there. With the Golfland, that is. Does
this golf course have a like a theme to it? Is there a...
They've got kind of everything.
A little bit of everything.
They've got like the windmill. They have an old sort of like Native American fort. They've got a big Chinese pagoda. Just the real, like the world tour of mini golf obstacles.
The last mini golf that Sarah and I did was February 2020. It's been a little while, and it was obviously right before
just kind
of the world lockdown.
Mini golf in right before they close the doors.
Right before everything goes to hell. But we went to Florida to go to Epcot. As adults, we had never been, and we're like, let's go do this weird like Florida getaway thing. Before we spent 3 months sitting on the couch, and while in Florida, found a pirate ship themed or pirate themed mini golf spot and had a really good time. Yeah, it was excellent.
Was that in Daytona Beach?
I think we were just outside of Orlando, honestly. It was a big touristy thing.
Yeah.
So there were two paths you could go. One was sort of the easy 9 holes of miniature golf, and there was the harder adults only, tougher course you could go. And it was two kind of branching paths. So we did the whole, we did the easy one, not up for the big challenge. And you get to the end and they're like, hey, for $5 more, you can play the remaining 9 holes. So we were like, let's do it. So we did 18 holes of mini golf.
Oh.
We got little pirate cross sword flags at the end and stuff. And I'm pretty sure I won. That's a story I'm sticking with anyways.
Oh man, we just did 18 holes. That was like the only option. There were like 2 18-hole courses.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, it was a lot of mini golf. And it was very hot on Saturday, so questionable. It was fine though, and we all survived.
Nice. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I'm a fan of mini golf.
It was good.
It's weird that mini golf is not translated to a video game. I can't think of a mini golf video game.
Oh, there was that old like Windows mini golf or something. I don't know if it was like a built-in thing, but it was not like a full-scale golf game.
Yeah. It seems like golf video games sort of aspire to, replicating the experience of like championship golf. But
right. I mean, as long as you're just playing virtual golf, might as well do the entire thing, not just sort of the putting.
Right. Yeah.
Well, again, like Kirby's Dream Course, kind of a mini golf experience.
It seems to be sort of the gold standard.
Yeah.
I have to get back to, yeah. Nice.
Yeah, so that was good. It's been a while.
Yeah. Excellent.
What else is going on? I spent a lot of time last week watching this one streamer playing Final Fantasy. And this is weird because I don't normally do this, but it is it's just a real weird time to be playing Final Fantasy XIV. It's kind of the space between expansions, so there's really nothing happening.
Mm-hmm.
But meanwhile, I think there's also just an enormous content drought in World of Warcraft. And people are just, I don't know if you keep up with Blizzard, how they're doing. People, they're just not having a good time. Like, they can't do anything right, it seems like. People are super mad about Diablo and Overwatch and World of Warcraft, and it feels like they're just looking for any excuse to jump ship.
Oh, so a lot of people, I think I heard about this. I think I heard about this in our Discord, in fact, are sort of defecting to the world of Final Fantasy XIV.
Yeah, so it's been, people are sick of World of Warcraft. There's nothing to do there either. They haven't played Final Fantasy before, and so a couple things are happening. Just normal players are deciding to see what's going on. But also a lot of, like, big-time streamers are doing this, and they're surprised they're having a good time with it. And sort of, like, word of mouth is spreading. So there has been a noticeable influx of new players coming in, which is exciting because that's very healthy for the game. Again, helps spread the word, which just means more support is always great.
Right.
So that's cool to see. It's been very fun. Part of the excitement of playing an MMO is just seeing other people out there doing random things in the world, and the more of that there is, I think that only makes the game just sort of more immersive and interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I've liked seeing that, but then over the last few weeks, I keep hearing sort of these murmurings of, I keep seeing people saying the same name over and over, which is Asmongold, who it turns out is an incredibly popular World of Warcraft streamer.
Oh.
And the reason people keep bringing him up, and they're saying, guys, Asmongold is going to start playing Final Fantasy XIV. He's defecting over from World of Warcraft. Maybe not defecting, but like for a long time, he was just adamant about not playing the game for whatever reason.
Sort of detouring, yeah.
He's going to take a little detour, in the Final Fantasy world. So I'm just like, okay, what does this mean for me? How does this affect me? So I look this guy up, and I've actually seen him before. And the context in which I've seen him is he is the guy in all these like YouTube recommended videos just making the worst like YouTube faces. You know what I'm talking about, where they're like, I can't believe this thing, and the thumbnail is just somebody making like the most ridiculous face. I'm just like, oh, great. Because that's like the easiest way to turn me off from watching your YouTube channel is just to have a bunch of those thumbnails with super close up on somebody's face. But so I started reading about him, find out he's like an incredibly successful streamer. World of Warcraft, he has like 2 million subscribers. People generally seem to like him, but say that like his chat is super toxic. So I'm like, oh, I don't like that. Because something I've learned just hearing about the World of Warcraft experience is that by default, it just sounds like everybody playing that game is just incredibly toxic. Just the worst. I mean, that was kind of my experience with Overwatch. So I don't know if that's just like the community that Blizzard kind of cultivates. Their games are very popular, so I guess if you have audiences that large, eventually you just get a certain amount of toxicity.
Yeah, absolutely.
But an incredibly common story of people coming over to Final Fantasy, and for the first time, especially from World of Warcraft, they're just like, oh, I can't believe how just nice the community is. And I'm just like, yeah, the community's nice. Were you expecting something else?
Also, don't junk it up. Don't bring your toxicity over here. Don't be throwing your garbage on the ground and stuff. Let's make sure you pick up after yourself. Treat people with respect.
That's why I was going with this. So I was like, so first of all, Warcraft players, like, who hurt you? Like, what is going on over there? It just feels like, people say, wow, refugee, but these feel like some of these people are actually escaping from a terrible environment. So I'm just like, oh my god, is this what you think all games are like? It's not that bad. But and then to your point, I'm just like, oh no, what does this mean for this game? Like, don't start bringing the riffraff over here. Yeah.
As someone who grew up in a beautiful part of New England, sort of once a year when the leaves start to change and all the people from New York sort of defect into Connecticut to check out how pretty the leaves are. And like suddenly your quiet little New England town has turned into, I don't know, the western armpit of New York City, and it's unpleasant. It really just feels like I've lost control of the plot here. I'm not sure what's happening, but this is not the town that I grew up in, or it's not the town I was in 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So as much as I love seeing all these new players running around and enjoying the game, I'm like, oh my God, I just turned into like a NIMBY. Where I'm like, don't come over here. Like, just keep all the WarCraft people in their own neighborhood or whatever. I'm like, this is the worst. I can't believe this is going on.
Well, they've all got to be like baby level, right? They can't sort of be, playing at the level that you are playing at this point in your
eventually
career.
Eventually they'll get to that point. I'm just like,
yeah, I'm like, not today, right? I mean, it takes time, does it not?
Yeah. I mean, you can boost your character, but it's a whole other story. So yeah, I'm just like, oh man, what's going to happen to the community now? And now there's like this Asmongold guy joining up. What is that going to do? So now I'm just in the same boat as all these other people. It's like, guys, Asmongold is coming. Watch out. What's going on? So there was this whole, like, he announced he's finally going to pick a server. He's finally going to start the game and do like one of his normal streams on it. There's all this commotion about what server he's going to create a character on. He had already selected, like, I'm going to play on the West North American data center, and like each data center has a bunch of smaller servers on it that he will then have to pick a character or create a character on. And people are freaking out because they're just like, what if he fixed my server? I won't be able to log in anymore because there'll be so many people just trying to like swarm him in the game.
This used to be such a nice neighborhood.
I know. No, exactly. I'm just having all the worst thoughts. Like, oh, God. I'm not going to be able to play this game anymore if he ends up moving into my neighborhood.
Good grief.
So he eventually chooses a different server than the one I'm on, thankfully.
They eventually build him his own server.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I don't know. He's pretty popular. And I decide, okay, I just need to keep abreast of what's going on. I will check out sort of his debut stream. Never having seen this guy actually streaming before, never really having seen any interactions with him beyond just his YouTube thumbnails. Mm-hmm. And to my surprise, it's actually really good. It was like super entertaining. Like I was saying, I never really watch people just doing the daily grind in Final Fantasy. Mm-hmm. Or especially never watch somebody just playing from level 1 up through the base game. Because
I mean, why would you? What would be the appeal of that? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll watch some streamers playing Final Fantasy if there's like an event or something or a particular boss they're fighting, but never just the entire day one experience because I don't know how interesting that seems. Like even to me, who's somebody who's like really into it. But no, it turns out he's actually a really entertaining streamer, and I think that part of it is just the character that he puts on is just. I mean, it's kind of silly. It's a little bit punched up. And maybe even like a little grating to the point where at some points he just seems like an obnoxious gamer. Mm-hmm. But in general, he's like very positive. And I think that while there are a lot of people who are expecting him to just bounce off this game immediately because he's like this diehard WarCraft player, right? I feel like some people are just making out this like big rivalry between these two games in their mind. So obviously somebody who likes World of Warcraft can never enjoy Final Fantasy.
Right.
But no, his stream has been such a positive experience. Seems like he's actually legitimately enjoying it. He seems very excited about all the sort of new player experiences that happen, like getting his first fancy armor set or doing his first dungeon with other people. I was like, man, this seems so wholesome compared to what everybody seemed to be afraid of when it was still in the rumor stages.
Good. And was his comment section an absolute nightmare, or was it relatively well moderated?
I mean, I just turned off the chat immediately.
Okay, well, probably the best solution.
Yeah, once you have a stream that large, there were like 200,000 people watching, which is insane. Like, the chat is just worthless anyway, because it's just a scroll. But it seemed like, I don't know, he's got his moderators staying on top of things. Seemed fine. I just thought it was so, the way he was approaching this game was so much more interesting than other people, like when I have tried to watch somebody just doing the leveling, because, I don't know, he was just so much more engaged with it. I guess that's why he's so popular when he streams WoW. So, I was very relieved. I thought it was just a weird thing that got kind of dumped on the 14 community. And now I've just been checking in on his stream every once in a while, just see where he's at. Seems like he's really into it.
Excellent. And you get the opportunity to sort of like see the kind of the day one, level one experience again through fresh eyes.
Yeah, I mean, that was also very fascinating.
Which I suspect you've not seen in a very long time.
Oh, no. Not for like, geez, 7 or 8 years at this point. It's frightening. Yeah. So it's been fun. Like, I'll check in with it. I'm like regularly watching somebody playing this game instead of actually playing it myself, which is kind of weird. But like I said, he like kind of plays a character on stream, which I don't know if I've really seen somebody do. I imagine to some degree anybody who streams is maybe not the exact person who they are, like offline, if that makes sense.
Sure.
But the weird thing, this sort of interesting thing about this guy, is that he's got his stream personality, and then he has this other channel where he'll sometimes do like less, like off-character streams, or just like, I don't know how you describe it, like streams as himself instead of this Asmongold guy.
Gotcha.
And he just seems like, a very humble, kind of normal dude, which is so weird because, like I was saying on this regular stream, sometimes he'll just come off as a little abrasive and over the top. And, he's just playing to the audience, I suppose. Which is good because it's very entertaining. But then it's very heartening to see him on this other channel just having, like, regular conversations with people, and he's like surprisingly like thoughtful and well spoken throughout this thing. I was like really impressed. So it's been a very weird experience.
Yeah. What a roller coaster of emotions, DJ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I'm kind of excited. I'm just like, man, I can't wait for him to get to like all the expansions and everything. It's kind of an interesting way to just re-experience everything in the game through somebody else's eyes. Right.
Well, cool. That's surprising, yeah. What word I was looking for to sort of describe that experience, but I don't know. Yeah, I feel like anytime I sort of stumble into any of those sort of like mega streams, I'm like, nope, this is not the tone that I sort of approach the world at. So yeah, I think anytime somebody's sort of prepared to tell me a story about this stream they watched, I'm like, wait for it to be awful.
Yeah.
So no, good for you. That's exciting. I'm happy for you.
Yeah. Generally, I don't have like a huge tolerance for, what I think is what I consider the typical sort of Twitch streamer or even like YouTube content creator personality. So it's actually very surprising to me that I've been enjoying this so much. I'm like, oh yeah, I could actually see myself watching this. I'm actually like, I'd really like to check out some of his WarCraft streams at this point because I know nothing about that game. So that could be very interesting. You
never went through a WarCraft thing?
I only played the beta of that game. I've always been very curious about it, but I think like during the beta came out while I was still in school, and I was just realized like I cannot start playing this, or I'm not going to graduate, or it's going to be very complicated.
Right.
So I just never played it, and I've always been very curious about it, and part of that is I think part of the reason I got so much into 14. But no, never actually had a legit character. So yeah, maybe I'll just watch somebody else play WarCraft, and that'll take care of it.
That might be the way to go. Yeah.
Yeah, the responsible choice.
Good.
Man, I totally forgot the entire point of that Asmongold story was that he is so popular, and there are so many of his viewers watching him now, that Final Fantasy broke all previous records for like daily concurrent players on Steam. And also, you can't buy the game anymore because it's sold out everywhere.
That's insanity.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, it's like unheard of. And surely that's not purely because of him. Like, there's been the exodus happening, but really, these are like evidence that there is a movement taking place.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty impressive the amount of sort of power these big streamers have over sort of the success or failure of some of these games. And obviously sort of Final Fantasy XIV was a success before Asmongold discovered it, but
right.
Among Us, I mean, was, condemned to disappear until streamers noticed it.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Resurrected it. So I think there's a lot to be, there's a lot to be said about what a disaster Twitch is and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, some of these streamers, man, do a lot of big work in making sure people pay attention to video games that would otherwise be overlooked.
Yeah.
Cool. So we should mosey into some of these games that we checked out this week here.
Got some of these demos.
Yeah. So Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruin, as we mentioned, actually just came out last week, end of last week. The demo is available on the... I almost said the 3DS. It's available on the Switch. The previous game, the previous Monster Hunter Stories game came out for the 3DS. That's probably why I have it in my brain.
Yeah, I was trying to remember. It's like, yeah, I guess the Switch wasn't around. So, 3DS game.
I think it was like just in the crossover because it was 2017, right? And that was the year the Switch came out. So.
Oh, was it? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So it was just as I think sort of the 3DS was kind of trailing off. But yeah, so it has made the leap from the 3DS to the Switch here. And there's a pretty substantial demo for it. As I mentioned, it gives you a whole big chunk of the first couple hours of the game. And we checked it out.
Yeah.
Now, I come at this from having minimal Monster Hunter experience.
Right.
The most Monster Hunter I played the demo for Rise with you.
Right.
Did not care for the experience at all.
No, it's a lot. I mean, it's not a great demo for brand new players, as we discussed earlier.
Yes. But I have played Monster Hunter Stories. I played the demo for that when it came out for the 3DS, and I went, holy cow, this is a really fun RPG, and like does not get into any of the weird gory stuff that the Monster Hunter series I sort of associate with.
I mean, okay, so when you say gory, are you talking about like monster gore or just the onslaught of things you need to know to be able to play that game?
Both. I think that's probably what I meant when I said it was, the whole like the hunter mentality of going out to kill the thing and then carving it up and making, a shield out of its bones.
Sure.
Just kind of grosses me out. Just the thought of that. I think one of the things that I sort of objected to when you and I were playing Rise was like you're fighting the monster and it sort of limps away and goes and like crawls up and tries to sleep to fix itself to feel better, and you sneak up on it and kill it while it sleeps. And I'm like, it's a video game and it's sort of a mythical made up creature in a video game, but that's dark and creepy. I think just my vegan brain will not allow me to experience that in a way that could be entertaining, I think.
I mean, a lot of these monsters are trying to exterminate everybody who lives in your little village.
Yeah. Well,
that may or may not be justification for it, but I'm just right. Saying. It's not like you're just wantonly going out, at least most of the time, and being like, oh, that's a good monster to kill. Let's kill that one.
But yeah, maybe you poke the bear. Maybe you could sort of peacefully coexist.
Right. Yeah. No, who's to say? Yeah.
That would not be a very entertaining video game, so hence we have like 40 Monster Hunter games.
Right.
But Monster Hunter Stories, at the very least, sort of takes kind of a kinder, gentler approach. The hook of the original game, and it appears to be sort of the hook of the second game as well, is that you're a tribe that sort of lives in kind of unison with the monsters. And that you sort of, again, a little weird, sort of break into their nest and steal their eggs. And when they fight you, you kill them. But sure, take the egg back, hatch it, raise a baby monster for your own, and it becomes your buddy.
Yeah.
And you sort of ride around on it and do like battles and stuff with it. So there's a little bit of a Pokemon kind of collect them all. How many eggs can you find? How many monsters can you raise from infancy? To build your little collection of monsters.
Yeah, I was just thinking, you take the egg and you raise the little baby monster, but you never tell them that you killed their parents back in the day.
Right, exactly. Which begs the question, at what point in a monster's life should you tell it it's adopted?
Right.
Yeah.
Then it seeks revenge. And then that's why you have all these Monster Hunter games.
You better sleep with one eye open.
Yeah. We were the villains all along.
I thought it was kind of funny in the beginning of the Monster Hunter Stories 2 demo. There are hunters in the game. There are like Monster Hunter type characters from sort of the mainline Monster Hunter games who are like, let's go kill the Rathalos, we're gonna go kill them all. And the peaceful villager people are like, calm down.
Right. Let us kill the Rathalos.
Right,
well, no,
yeah.
not
exactly.
that Rathalos, the other one.
Who invited these horrible hunters to our town? Like, there's like this whole like very clear kind of fractured relationship between, the heavily armored meathead looking monster dudes and the peaceful hippie, monster worshippers.
Right.
Yeah. Got a little heated there at the beginning.
Yeah, that was kind of a weird start to the game, actually.
That intro was very long.
Yes. So that brings me to my other concern that I mentioned earlier is, what's the deal with demos? It just feels like they're so long. And especially just not talking about even overall length, but just getting into this demo.
Yeah.
And going through, like, you do the character creator, I think. But then there's so much cutscene at the start of this game. And it's ridiculous. I think I complained a little bit about this in River City Girls, in that there's just so much story content you have to wade through. But I feel like these days I just have no patience when a game, or especially a demo, does this. Which is insane, because I will like log into Final Fantasy and just do nothing. But this I'm just like, oh, I can't, like, when do I actually get to play this game, I guess? Like, if I'm going to be going out of my way to try this demo, is it a movie? Is there a game at some point? I don't know.
I mean, it is called Monster Hunter Stories, so
right.
It would be sort of a weak proposition to call your game that, and then have just the shadowy image of a plot and characters attached to it. I mean, if that's what you want, you have sort of your mainline Monster Hunter games, right, which are not. And you correct me if I'm way off base on this, not story heavy at all, really.
Right.
Character heavy.
Well, this is actually something I thought about when I was playing this, because for a long time there has been this contingent of people who are like, why don't the Monster Hunter games have a story? I'm like, I don't want them to have a story. They're not about having a story. And they have
a situation. They don't really have a story.
They have a situation. Yes, that's all I want. I want a good, compelling situation, and then I can go do something and go push some buttons. They've been trying with each progressive installment to just squeeze more story into there. And they actually dialed it back with Rise, which I thought was, a step in the right direction. Mm-hmm. But I know there's still people out there who are just like, what's the monster's motivation or whatever? And I guess I was like, okay, well, so that's why stories exist, surely.
Yeah. That is the bucket you dump all your Monster Hunter stories into.
Yeah, hopefully.
It's right there in the name.
Right, yeah, exactly. A little on the nose.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, fine. I get it. It's for those people. And it seemed like they actually, like, I was impressed actually with the amount of sort of, I don't want to say effort that they put into the story in this one. I mean, it goes far beyond the story in Monster Hunter World, and especially Monster Hunter Rise. But this is like even other RPGs I played, the cutscenes in this were very impressive in terms of just like how kind of directed and choreographed they seem to be. Like, the presentation's really good.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And the first game, the first Monster Hunter Stories game, showed much the same way. I think that was not a thing that I was, really itching to play. There was a demo for it, and I'm like, well, maybe this can give me a taste of what sort of the Monster Hunter hubbub is about. And again, much like Monster Hunter Stories 2, really just kind of impressed by the visuals and sort of the kind of, I don't even know what this means anymore. It gets overused so much, the anime style kind of character design and cutscenes and stuff like that. But yeah, it definitely felt like a sort of a very polished package. The town, the little village you start in Monster Hunter Stories 2 is super detailed and super kind of sprawling, and it's sort of you're kind of built on the river. So you have little pathways, wooden planks and stuff like that go up to different levels. And you have sort of different huts and buildings and out shops and stuff like that kind of stacked on top of each other. And again, it just feels very sort of detailed and elaborate, and sort of bustling with activity and people and stuff to check into. So, it's a hub town, obviously, so you kind of want that level of detail and engagement to sort of get you on the road. But was really kind of impressed by how elaborate it is, and maybe how elaborate it doesn't necessarily need to be.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. Like the whole visuals of this, the anime look, as you were saying, it's so good. It looks really good. I just found myself kind of gawking at it at so many points because like it's so different from the normal like the traditional Monster Hunter games, I guess, which have always been very sort of naturalistic in the way they render the characters, and this is like very anime looking. Everybody has like very colorful and oversized facial features. The whole game is like cell shaded in a very Breath of the Wild style. I found myself thinking, like, just in the character creator, like, oh, do I want the rest of the Monster Hunter games to look like this? Because it is so striking compared to what I'm used to seeing in these games. Very different look. And then the town is good too, as you were saying. It's kind of like the more recent games have had sort of this level, maybe not quite this level of detail in the towns, but definitely more than they could afford on the PSP.
Right, sure, that makes sense.
But they're still like streamlined a bit to make them easier to, you come back from a hunt, you take care of whatever you need to do in town very efficiently so you can get back out there. But this one feels like, you could actually like live there and, walk up and down the different planks to the different amenities around the town. Very good for this type of game.
It's one of those things where I'm sort of like, geez, I don't know if this is a really long demo or if I just spent, 45 minutes walking hut to hut, building to building, talking to everybody.
Yeah.
Like, did I need to do that? No, but I did.
I was trying to stay really focused because I was like, okay, I could go talk to all these people and they'll probably give me a side quest or whatever, but I really just want to, then I'll, be 10 hours into this thing before I do my first fight.
Right, exactly. Beyond sort of the cutscenes and dropping you in that hometown, essentially, it does kind of get you to the action relatively quickly, and you start sort of getting into the sense of what kind of the loop of this thing is going to be, where you, like I said, sort of go out into the world and look for eggs and bring them back and create kind of a catalog of monsters at your disposal that you're raising and will fight alongside and travel alongside and can ride on. In fact. You get a bit of a different kind of combat experience from the mainline Monster Hunter games. This is turn-based and has a lot of fun little hooks where you and your monster kind of attack simultaneously. There is a rock, paper, scissors kind of thing. Your mileage may vary. It seems like some of the reviewers don't necessarily love that. I think it's kind of a nice and fun and kind of concise way to, assess what you're up against in a battle and roll out your defense or attack. So in this case, you have speed, technical, and what's the other one?
Power
attacks. Yeah, I was going to say heavy, but
that works.
And sort of one knocks out the other. Essentially, this has been used in the Fire Emblem games in the past. And probably countless other RPGs I can't think of off the top of my brain right now.
It was hilarious to see this. Was this in the 3DS version? Yes, the
yeah.
Oh.
It feels much more sort of fleshed out in stories too. But yeah, it did a version of it did exist.
Did it still use the like red, green, and blue coloring?
Not that I remember, but it's been a little bit since I played that. Yeah.
Okay, that's just hilarious to me because that is just. That's like. Is it Fire Emblem? I don't know if do the regular Fire Emblem games use that? I think it was in like the mobile version for sure. I just really closely associate it with mobile games. Like Puzzle and Dragons had that, and Dragalia Lost uses the same red, green, blue like hierarchy.
Yeah, Yakuza 7 has it too, so it has become
in the business game,
the management sim. Yeah.
Which was like as soon as that popped up, I was just like, oh. Finally, all my Dragalia Lost hours are going to pay off in this thing.
See, and I can't sort of keep it straight in my brain. In all of those games, I've had to sort of take a screenshot or take a picture of the TV screen with my phone to like help me remember the order.
Oh yeah.
And much like in Monster Hunter Stories and Stories 2 now, I have to screenshot the screen that sort of explains, power beats technical and technical beats the other one.
In Dragalia, it's very easy because I always remember, so water beats fire, And then I just kind of go from there because the other ones don't make as much sense to me.
Which is probably what Pokemon sort of relies on too, is that you have sort of a shorthand understanding of how fire, water, and grass interact with each other.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Yeah, but it's the minute by minute combat in a mainline Monster Hunter game, I think, is probably a little more intense, a little more action oriented, obviously, and then the stories games, it can be a little more methodical, and you have all action freezes while you fire up your next move and plot out your next attack and stuff like that. So you definitely have the opportunity to be a little more thoughtful, I guess, about what you kind of roll out and what kind of options you have available for lining up your next fight, next attack.
Yeah. Although it's weird because it feels like your option really is just attacking using one of the three colors. And then once you figure out what attacks the other monster you're fighting is typically going to use, you really just want to use that one.
Yeah. And then you're sort of building up sort of big finishers in that move. So where you and your monster can attack at the same time, or you can, ride your monster into battle, or you and your, cohort can fight alongside of each other and go for an all-out attack. So yeah, kind of the early rounds of a fight are really you just trying to figure out what is the other monster going to throw at me, and sort of trying to combat that appropriately, and then build up those meters to go for a big finisher.
Right. And so once I realized that they have this, like the 3-color system, I had totally forgotten that it was in Stories 1, but I was just like, I don't know if I want to deal with that, like, every single battle. Because sure, certainly in other games you have similar situations where, like, this element beats this other element, but in this one it just feels so integrated into everything. Like, you have your standard attacks, and those each have like your color options, but then all your special attacks have 3 versions of that attack that you also have to sync up with whatever the monster is using. It just felt a little like once you figure out what the monster's going to do, you just only want to use the like appropriate color to counter it, right? There are a few cases where the monster will switch it up and you have to react and be like, oh, I need to stop using power and move to speed or whatever.
Yeah, or you have multiple monsters with different sort of, affinities.
Right. Oh, I haven't run into a mixed group yet. Interesting. But it felt like, it felt kind of like, I don't know, like I don't want to take this extra step on every single action I take. I just kind of want to select the thing from the menu, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that is just a weird hang-up that I have about it.
Yeah, I think I have, the most recent one that I played was the Shin Megami Tensei 3, the most recent RPG. And, prior to that, obviously, sort of Persona games and whatnot, they don't necessarily have the rock, paper, scissors thing, but there is always sort of a character on your team, and there's always a function sort of in your abilities early in a round where you can sort of, basically check your codex to see if you fought this monster before and what they're sort of weak against or strong against. Inevitably, Persona 5, there's the little cat, and it's funny because in Monster Hunter Stories 2, you have a little cat that kind of serves the same purpose, who will this monster is weak to fire. And so, of course, in, Persona, you go through all of your characters and look to see who has fire attacks and make sure you roll those out because you get, higher probability of criticals and stuff like that. So it's not necessarily the rock, paper, scissors of it, but there definitely is sort of an elemental, strength and weakness kind of thing that you're trying to exploit. And then, spam those attacks to wrap it up as quickly as possible so you don't die.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm all about exploiting elemental weaknesses.
Yes. I apologize for trying to sort of mansplain that to you on our podcast, but
in this one...
Really, Randy, this is an interesting concept to me I've never heard of before.
Yeah. In this one, though, because of the way the battles are set up, it's like you attack simultaneously with the other monster, right? So when you go into the rock, paper, scissors thing, if you just sort of brainlessly pick the wrong one, you're going to get ruined by the monster.
Right.
So it does feel like it's a little more necessary than just being like, oh, it's an ice monster, I'll just hit him with my fire spell. Or whoops, no, I got it backwards. If I was just playing Dragalia last, I'd be in trouble. But I don't know, it just felt like, I don't know, just a level of sort of like micromanagement that I wasn't expecting.
Gotcha. But yeah, I mean, in short, I had fun with the demo. I think much like the first one, if I didn't have Zelda coming out this week and a bunch of other games sort of on the near horizon that I know that I'm sort of interested in and want to play, I'd probably jump on this. I found the demo for the first one to be pleasantly surprising and engaging, and again, sort of found myself somewhat enamored by the sequel here, Stories 2, and wrapped up the demo going, geez, I think I would play this if I didn't have a whole list of video games coming out in the next couple of weeks that I definitely want to get to.
Right.
So I thought it was fun. It definitely is a different speed of a Monster Hunter game, and I think the sort of the quality of the presentation and it being turn-based, which seems to be how I sort of prefer games these days, all pushed kind of all the right buttons for me.
Yeah, so despite my sort of dislike of that rock, paper, scissors thing in the battle system.
General apathy.
Just apathy, yeah, sure. So, yeah, despite all that, I actually was thinking kind of the same thing. Like, oh, I really like the way that this is sort of set up. I mean, I don't necessarily like all the long cutscenes, but I like the idea of playing a Monster Hunter game or something that is in kind of like that Monster Hunter world. God, not Monster Hunter world, just a Monster Hunter environment that is not the typical Monster Hunter game. But yeah, I just don't really see myself jumping into it at this exact moment. Although I did have a funny sort of reaction. Like, you go through all the cutscenes at the start, you get sent out on your first sort of quest to become a Monster Hunter. And I was like, up to that point, I was like, all right, I'm ready to play this turn-based RPG. Let's do it. And then when it cuts the shot of your character just standing there and she's got like the huge sword just hung on her back, I was like, oh man,
yeah,
I just want to play Monster Hunter now. I don't want to do like RPG battles. I just want to, swing the sword around. But I think I would be able to adjust.
Yeah, there are, and I don't know how many of them you can pick up in the demo, but I know I've read that you can get sort of a number of kind of classic Monster Hunter weapons at your disposal. And
oh yeah,
you can carry around up to 3 of them, I think.
That was a thing. I think early on they teach you that you can switch to a hammer because one of the monsters you're fighting is a big rock you have to break.
Right. Yeah. They're sort of blocking your shots by holding a rock in front of their body.
Yeah, which is exactly what they do in the full games or the other games.
Oh, really?
Which is fun. But I was like, oh,
that's interesting.
I don't remember being able to switch your weapon in the first game. Granted, I didn't play a lot of that one. So I was like, oh, I want to use the longsword because that's my weapon in Monster Hunter Rise. And they don't have it in this game. So I was like, oh.
Not in the demo or not in the game at all?
It's not in the
research
game.
on this? Oh, that's a bummer.
They don't have every single weapon from the more recent Monster Hunter games, which, to be fair, there are a lot of weapons in Monster Hunter at this point. But man, I felt like the longsword kind of a staple weapon. A little disappointed that it's they left it out of this one, but whatever. I guess it can't always be in the spotlight.
Yeah. Plus, you could go play Monster Hunter Rise.
It's true. Yeah. I suppose, if you're just doing turn-based battles, maybe the distinction between having a big great sword and a long sword starts to lessen. So you just have too many swords at some point.
I remember that in the demo of Rise, like that screen where it's sort of like, pick which, weapon you want to start with. And there's 27 of them. Is that the right number?
That's too many. I mean, there are a lot.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
17?
I think it's like 17. Yeah. To a new player, it might as well be 27.
And feeling like, we're really kind of splitting hairs on some of these.
Yeah. No, that's totally true.
Yeah.
You have you have a heavy bow and you have a light bow. What? Okay. Sorry, a bow gun, and then you also have a third bow, which is just a bow.
I need a nice midweight bow, please.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so I would maybe roll back to this. Unfortunately, it's probably going to mean that if I wait long enough, I'll have to replay the demo and sit through those early cutscenes again, which once you get beyond that, there are not a lot of that kind of yammering going on. But I think I would roll back to this at some point.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't know if I would have an issue with the cutscenes in the main game. I was just like, guys, I'm trying to get through the demo. Yeah. I got a show to do.
Yeah, I feel like demos definitely have a responsibility to sort of like be a little bite, be a little like, here's a little teaser, here's a little sort of nugget of something. to kind of, demonstrate what your experience playing the main game would be like.
Yeah.
So if you sort of, devolve into really long cutscenes and don't get to the goddamn point, it makes me sort of feel like I'm going to be bored by this game.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Again, Monster Hunter Stories, people are here for the story experience. Maybe that is exactly what people want. So maybe I should cut him some slack. Although I realize, so one of the first options it gives you when you start the demo is English or Japanese audio track. And I was like, guys, where's my Monster Hunter language audio track? Where is it? We've been over this.
Yeah.
That probably would have got me to sit through more of those cutscenes than I did. I mean, I probably would have made them easier to skip through. But, yeah. I understand there's probably just like way more cutscene content in this, so maybe it wasn't practical, but I'm kind of missing that option.
Maybe it's in the full game.
I suspect it's probably not in the full game.
But I don't know. I've not done the research on that.
I appreciate your optimism.
So we also checked out, and I didn't get a chance to play this one yet, the demo for the new The World Ends With You.
Yeah. Just another colossal demo that leads into the full game, I believe.
Is it huge? Is it another big one? Yeah.
I played it for quite a while. I didn't finish it. I don't know if I'll actually go back to it because I feel like I can sum up my impression of the demo pretty well, which was, so I started up over like sometime last week. And as I said, it's a very long demo, so you can save in the middle of it, or I just put my Switch to sleep, more likely. And then I was really in the mood to get back to River City Girls. I started it up, and this demo was running. I was like, oh god, this thing. I'd rather be playing something else than this thing, but I don't know. It's weird, because I was a big fan of the original The World Ends With You on the DS. I thought it was one of the only... It was like one of a few games that really sort of pushed the concept of the two screens very well. Because in that game, you would control a character on the top screen and a character on the bottom screen, and they would be doing different things. And on top of that, one of them you control with the D-pad and one of them with the touchscreen. So there was just a lot going on in that game.
Oh.
But it was amazing once you finally sort of wrapped your head around the entire thing. It was not the most intuitive game to pick up and play.
But that is generally a very well-regarded video game. The original World Ends With You.
Yeah.
I think I've attempted to play it twice now, and I don't get the appeal.
I can't imagine you enjoying any aspect of that game.
No.
Except, well, maybe the soundtrack. Like, all of the art, like the soundtrack and the character design and sort of the premise, the situation in this game are all extremely good.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what got me there, is that, well, every time I sort of read kind of the definitive list of the best games on the DS, The World Ends With You is on it. And every time I see sort of screenshots of it or I see the box art and stuff like that, I'm like, this looks like a game I would like. This definitely has that sort of highly stylized, what has sort of become, I think, synonymous with modern Persona games. This feels like my vibe. And then I get into it and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. I don't know what any of this means. It feels like too much.
Yeah, it's a lot, and I'll get into that. I just wanted to give a rare, just completely positive shout out to Tetsuya Nomura, who did the character design. Normally I feel like a lot of his stuff is a little much for me, but like this feels like The World Ends With You always felt like this is the game he was meant to, to do the characters for, because all the the clothing is kind of inspired by just like that Harajuku Japanese fashion, and I just really felt like, oh, this is it. Like, he's doing such a good job with these characters. I don't want the Final Fantasy 15 like boy band. Everybody's wearing black. I don't need the dude in a t-shirt from that new Final Fantasy, but like these like character designs are all terrific. I just thought it was, he's just make a ton of these things.
And those are all the same character designer. That's kind of an interesting collection of work.
Yeah, I mean he's got quite a range, but I feel like some of his stuff lands better with me than his other stuff. But just terrific. So getting into this demo, I was not sure what to expect, because like, how do you come back to this game like 15 years later? How is it going to land this time? Especially without the two screens. How are you even going to play this?
And how many people sort of playing this are even familiar with the original World Ends With You? And
right.
Is it, do you need familiarity with it to appreciate it? Or is this just sort of like, maybe a lot of people sort of picking it up in 2021 don't even know there was a previous game.
Right. Which is kind of interesting because it's called Neo and not like The World Ends With You 2. So on some level that suggests that it is like, I don't know if I call it a reboot, but it kind of has that feeling. Like if that's what they were going for, then sure, it kind of feels like it could be like that. But it's basically the same setup as the previous game, where you're a bunch of teenagers in Shibuya, Japan, and you find yourselves trapped in some sort of game that is run by like demons, or in the game they're called Reapers, I think. And basically you have to make it to the end of this game, or else you're dead, or you're like already dead somehow, and this is the only way you can escape from this game. I don't want to like get too much into the details because I think part of the mystery of the storyline in the first game was just sort of unraveling what exactly was going on. But it feels like it's a very similar premise. Certainly, people who played the first game will feel right at home. So that brings me to the battles, which are very different in that the first game was a lot of like tapping on the touchscreen because you had these little pins, like a button that you put on your jacket or whatever.
Right.
But in this game, each pin has a magical power that would you could activate in battle by either like tapping on it, or drawing a line on the screen, or I forget what else you would do. But there are a whole bunch of crazy like sort of touchscreen centric actions you could take. And in this one, it's kind of the same. You have in the demo, at least the part that I played, you have 3 characters, and they each have only 1 pin, and it still allows them to perform some unique action. But it's sort of like you have these 3 pins, and they map to a button, like one of the face buttons on the controller. And depending what it is, you pretty much just use a combination of the buttons to execute these different attacks. So I think my setup, or the one that I ended up using a lot, was I'd have one guy with like a melee attack, and the other one would have a ranged attack. And then the third was some sort of like weird charge move. You would just hold it down, and it would just do like a flamethrower kind of thing. And the idea is you just use these, you kind of alternate between these attacks and battles to rack up combos on these enemies. And by like continuing your combo, I guess you bonus damage. It's more effective against them. It's very frantic. I don't feel like I totally just like grasped the best way to play this, especially since it throws a lot of pins at you right away, so you have a lot of different options to experiment around with.
Gotcha.
So in that sense, it kind of felt the same way as the DS game did, because you're trying to juggle all these pins around. Meanwhile, you've got the character on the second screen like doing her other thing, and I was like, oh man, kind of a steep learning curve to this. Which kind of brings me back to your point in that there is just so much going on in this game, very similar to the DS one, which I felt kind of came out at this period where felt like a lot of Square Enix games just felt like they had tons and tons of superfluous systems crammed into them just for the sake of giving people more things to do.
Sure.
Or just like
sort
more
of
complexity.
As depth, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of it felt like sure, you could do this if you really wanted to maximize your like effectiveness. And a lot of it you can just completely ignore, and it's fine. But The World Ends With You especially felt like oh man, they're really taking this to the next level. Like you got all the pins, you can level up all your pins. You get the character on the second screen. There was this whole like the thing that really pushed it over the edge in the original was you could like eat meals, and I forget what the meals did at this point. It probably like boosted your stats or restored your health or something. But also, depending on the meals you ate, I think you could build up like a favorite food, or you would get tired of certain foods that you'd eat and they'd be less effective. There was just so much going on. I haven't reached the point where there was like a food system in the new one, so I don't know if that is that has returned. But at one point, I opened up the menu and kind of tabbed over to an option called Swag Stash, which is basically a complete catalog of everything you've collected in the game, whether it's pins or like everything else you need to collect. There are like 4 or 5 different categories, and there are probably like 500 little icons on the screen just grayed out because I hadn't collected them yet. And it was just like, oh my god, okay, I remember how this game worked. There was just so much going on. So much stuff to keep track of. Very overwhelming for a demo.
Yeah. That's probably very overwhelming for, the entire game. So
right.
To sort of drop it on you in the demo is particularly ballsy, I think.
Well, it feels like one of those games where, if you're really planning to get into it, there is so much stuff you can just really sink your teeth into, which I like sometimes. But even in the first game, I definitely got to the point where I was like, I'm not going to fully max out all these systems because it's just too much for me to keep track of. So this one, if I ended up playing it, I feel like it would probably turn out mostly the same way. So especially in this demo, I was just, I'm just here trying to get a sense of how the game works and, how it's different from the DS one. I don't need to, start worrying about this massive catalog of things. Like, why are you even showing this to me?
Right.
But I guess because it's one of those demos which is just, a slice of the first, I guess, few hours, the opening hours of the game, at this point, they really can't kind of lock too much stuff away.
Because it's supposed to roll into the main game, and you should be prepared for that challenge when it comes, right? Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is, as much as I like as much as I enjoyed the original game, one of the things I didn't really care for is that the main character was just so dour and kind of unlikable. And it's like, I get it. He's kind of a sad high schooler. He's not having a great time. But it just like brought the whole mood of every scene he's in down so much. And it's the same way in this game. The main guy is like, he's just not having a great time, I guess. He's not very enthusiastic about whatever he's supposed to be doing. His buddy, who you end up hanging out with, is very sort of like peppy and animated, to the point where I think if he was in any other game, I would just be like, oh my god, what is like this guy? I can't stand this guy. He is so irritating. But because he is paired up with the main character in this game, every time he speaks, I'm just like, oh, thank God, it's not the other guy.
You need that little ray of sunshine, right?
Yeah. So far, I mean, the cast has been very interesting. It's another very eclectic group of people, much like in the first game. So I'm pretty optimistic about how those worked out. But man, they can't just have an interesting high schooler as the main character. I guess they've always just got to be this very like sour personality.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the sort of perspective on that is. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Mopey sad goths.
yeah, exactly. So anyway, I ended up playing through a few battles. It feels very familiar, sort of conceptually. I mean, you're not playing the same dual screen setup as you were before, but a lot of there's just a lot of things happening simultaneously that you have to kind of manage. And after it feels like after a few hours playing this, you'll be much more proficient about doing that, because the opening few battles, there's just a lot happening.
It sort of sounds like, there was not an elegant way to bring the DS version of The World Ends With You to the Switch. So there had to be sort of like structural concessions made to only having a single screen.
Yeah.
So it does feel, at least in your description, a little bit like kind of a remake, reimagining rather than, a direct sequel.
Yeah. In some sense, it feels like they just, I mean, I don't even know how they would do that second character with the completely different control scheme. I know they released the original one on different platforms that didn't have the same control scheme, or the two screens anyway. So I don't know exactly how that worked.
I was wondering if that was one of those games that was sort of, lost to the ages with the DS.
Yeah, I think it might have come out on the Switch. Don't hold me to that, but it's definitely on other platforms than the DS at this point. So I'm glad they didn't inelegantly try and cram that in Like they kind of knew what their limitations were going to be.
Right.
It's just I'm not sure if it is if the promise of playing as this kind of irritating character and dealing with all these systems, and again, like Monster Hunter Story, is very lengthy cutscenes. Is what I need at this exact moment.
It doesn't sound like you're necessarily sold on this one.
No, I mean, I think I'll probably go back and finish the demo. It's cool that they even made another one of these because it was such a weird like oddity when the first one appeared.
Yeah, and it's been a long time. Like you said, it has been 15 years, right?
Yeah. Like all the characters in the first game graduated and probably have kids at this point.
That's an interesting game. I would play that game.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I didn't get too far into the story. Maybe they show up at some point. They're all like middle-aged. That'll be interesting.
Cool. All right.
I can't imagine that's what happens, but who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. I don't know why it's so hard to sort of put adults in RPGs. It's just like every RPG has to be sort of, and this is not an original complaint. I have heard this uttered many times, but every RPG has to have, high schoolers in it. And I'm like, adults do interesting things on a daily basis. Let's put some adults in these games.
Do they? Do adults do interesting things?
I mean, despite all the evidence to the contrary in my life, but
right.
I'm left to believe that there are adults doing interesting things out there.
I mean, I kind of felt the same way about the first game as I feel about this, is that it does feel like that is probably their audience, just high schoolers who play video games. So sure, make a guy who is just, that personality type, give them all these tons of systems to deal with because that's what they're into.
Hmm.
So I don't know. The fact that, other than the fact that the main character is just very unlikable, I didn't really have a huge issue with everybody being teenagers, or at least most of the cast being teenagers.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap this thing up, I guess. If you need any more video game hangover in your brain, you should definitely follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover. And you can always get show notes and links and tell us what you thought about the show at VGHangover.com. We would love for you to hang out with us on Discord. You can get a link to join us at VGHangover.com as well. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else you can get a podcast. And help us out by telling your friends about the show.
Yeah. One idea I had is that, if you're hanging out on a forum or some sort of online community and somebody is making one of those threads that's like, what are your favorite podcasts? Maybe throw up a link to Video Game Hangover. If for one of your favorite podcasts, that is. Like, don't lie to your friends.
I had somebody in my sort of social circle post a thing on Facebook that was like, hey, we're going on a road trip. What podcast should we listen to? I'm like, now's my moment.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Not knowing whether or not she's a gamer and would appreciate this at all, I made sure I plugged VGHangover.com.
Oh, it's a show for all audiences, I think, regardless of interest.
Yeah. Your introduction to gaming right here.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about mini golf. What could be more universal? I don't know.
Yeah, really. I mean, if somebody just listened to the first half of this, they would think it's the mini golf hangover.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what people want.
Write that down. That's a good idea. Yeah. Let's copyright that. Is that URL available?
Well, we'll go grab it before we publish this episode. Yeah. Anyway, speaking of good ideas, we want to give thanks again to HEAVYVIPER for our intro and outro music this week. Please head on over to heavyviper.bandcamp.com and listen to more of our stuff. It's good.
Nice. We'll be back next week. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
Thanks for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye.
Good night.
See ya.